This happened about 4 years ago, back when I was bartending. It was a busy Friday night, and I was working with our bar manager when he asked me to run out and grab some last-minute supplies we'd need to get through the weekend. You know, stuff like limes, lemons, bitters, all the usual bar stock. There was a 24-hour grocery store just a few minutes down the road, so I grabbed my keys and headed out without thinking twice. For context, I was 25 at the time, blonde, pretty slim, and definitely used to getting attention from people while working. But nothing had ever felt threatening before. Anyway, I'm flying through the store, knocking stuff off the list, no issues. But when I get to the liquor aisle, I notice 2 guys, probably around my age, just loitering. They had that rough around the edges country boy look, flannel shirts, trucker hats, the whole thing. As soon as I walked by, they stopped talking and just stared, whispering back and forth with these weird little smirks, like they thought they were being subtle. I figured they were just being creepy, so I grabbed what I needed as quickly as I could and made a beeline for self-checkout, hoping that would be the end of it. It wasn't. They followed me, like right up to the register next to mine. Up close, they looked even more off. One was tall and kind of built. The other was shorter, stockier. Both of them looked like they hadn't showered in a few days, and their eyes were bloodshot, like they were either drunk high or maybe both. As I'm scanning my stuff, the taller one starts chatting me up, saying things like, "Looks like you're ready to party," and asking if I wanted to hang out with them later. I tried to brush it off politely, just that quick smile and nod Midwestern style to avoid confrontation. But they weren't taking the hint. It started going downhill fast. One of them made a comment about how I probably only mess with doctors or rich guys, and how I thought I was too good for them. Then he said something about how they could teach me a lesson. And the way he said it made my stomach twist. It was definitely threatening. Suddenly, I was in that weird, quiet panic mode, where your body just kind of goes on autopilot. I casually reached into my purse like I was grabbing my wallet. But really, I was sliding my pocket knife up my sleeve, just in case things went south. I made eye contact with the woman monitoring the self-checkout lanes. She was tall, solid, not someone you'd want to mess with. And I tried to give her a look that said, "I don't feel safe right now." Almost like she read my mind. The machine started beeping, like it glitched or something. She swooped in right away. And the second she got close, those guys completely switched up their act. Suddenly, they were cracking jokes, pretending we were friends, trying to act like nothing was going on. One of them even said I was trying to steal something, like it was some inside joke. But the worker wasn't buying it for a second. She gave them the most unimpressed look, canceled my order on the screen, and then turned to me and said, super calm, "Let me ring you up at another register." She gently steered me away toward a register near the security office and kept herself between me and the guys the whole time. As she was scanning my stuff, she quietly said, "There was nothing wrong with that self-checkout. I saw the way they were acting, and I've already got security ready to walk you out to your car when you're done." Then she added, "Also, good job on pulling out that knife. I saw that you were ready, and that's smart. But I'm glad I got to step in before you had to use it." At this point, the 2 guys had already paid for their stuff, but they were still loitering near the exit, just watching me. The worker kept tapping at the register, pretending she was having trouble just to stall them. Eventually, they gave up and left. Or so we thought. While we were waiting, I got a call from my bar manager. I explained everything. He was furious, ready to drive over and handle it himself, which was sweet, but not necessary. When it was finally time to leave the worker, and the security guard walked with me through the nearly empty parking lot. And guess what? Way at the back of the lot, there was this big old pickup truck just idling. Headlights on, pointed directly at the store entrance. They had moved the truck so they could see exactly when I came out. I wasn't getting into my car until I knew they were gone. But when they saw me standing there with the store worker and the guard, all three of us, just staring them down, they peeled out of the lot in this loud, aggressive burnout, like they were trying to intimidate us one last time. Pathetic, honestly. I must have thanked that worker and the guard a dozen times. I even wrote a long letter to corporate explaining everything, making sure they knew just how amazing those employees were. She didn't have to go that far for me. She didn't even know me, but she did. And I honestly believe she might have saved my life that night. Since then, I've never gone shopping alone after midnight. And I never will again. This happened a couple of years ago when I was 16. And even though it was supposed to be just a chill family trip, it turned into something that honestly still messes with me. We were staying at this really fancy hotel in what was supposed to be a safe part of a big Midwestern city. I had my own room. My parents were just a few doors down. And at the time, that felt totally fine. I'd stayed in hotels before. Nothing had ever happened. So I didn't think twice about being by myself. The first night was totally uneventful. I hung out in my room, watched one of those overpriced movies they charge you for, and snacked on way too many overpriced cookies from the minibar. The next morning, we did the usual touristy stuff, walked around, took photos, had breakfast at the hotel restaurant. And that's when I noticed this older man, probably in his 60s, just staring at me. I tried not to overthink it. Figured maybe I looked like someone he knew. Or maybe he was just a creep, giving off weird vibes like some men do. Either way, I brushed it off. Didn't even mention it. That night, my parents said it was fine for me to go out for dinner with a friend, someone I'd known through social media, who lived nearby. We'd been talking for a while, and finally decided to meet up in person. We ate caught up, and ended up back at the hotel bar for a drink. Yeah, I know I was underage, but let's not focus on that part. And wouldn't you know it, the same guy from breakfast was there, sitting at the bar, just watching me. But this time, it was different. The way he looked at me gave me full-body chills. Like he wasn't just being weird, he was fixated. Even my friend Ethan noticed. He leaned over and said something like, "Okay, that guy's staring at you way too hard." We didn't stick around. It was around 12:30 in the morning, so we decided to call it a night. Ethan walked me to the elevators, gave me a hug goodbye, and left. I hit the button, and literally seconds after he turned the corner, that guy appeared beside me, like he'd been waiting. I felt frozen. I knew he was going to see what floor I got off on, and I wasn't thinking clearly enough to fake it. So, we both got in the elevator. He didn't press a button, which somehow made it feel even worse. He just stood there, staring. When the doors opened on my floor, I walked as quickly as I could without actually running. I could feel his eyes on me, but I didn't hear him follow. I turned my head. He was just standing at the end of the hallway watching where I went. I got into my room, locked the door, and just sat there in silence for a while, trying to calm myself down. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to go tell my parents what had happened. They were obviously freaked out. We told the hotel staff, but by then the guy had vanished. They said they'd look into it, but it was late, and there wasn't much they could do right then. so I went back to my room, tried to sleep. I was just starting to doze off when there was a knock at my door. And at that point, every scary story I'd ever read online came flooding into my brain. I didn't say a word, just flipped on a light and stood there listening. The knocking got louder, more urgent. I finally shouted out asking who it was, and I swear the voice that answered was straight out of a nightmare. This creepy, high-pitched giggle mixed with a scratchy whisper that said, "Hot staff. Open up, please." I froze. I looked through the peephole, and my stomach dropped. It was him, the same creepy man, now, right outside my room. I grabbed my phone and locked myself in the bathroom as I called my dad. Thankfully, he always leaves his ringer on. He picked up fast. I was crying so hard, I could barely get the words out. But I managed to tell him that the guy from the elevator was now at my door. What happened next still feels surreal. My dad stormed out of his room and found the man standing outside mine in nothing but a hotel robe. And he was doing something no one ever wants to see. My dad lost it, punched the guy hard, and pinned him to the floor while my mom called security. The police came, and it turned out this wasn't the guy's first offense. He got arrested, and last I heard, he's doing time now, probably for attempted assault, or worse. So this happened over 3 decades ago. But honestly, it's one of those memories that never fades. I was in college back then, and for whatever reason, I decided it would be a good idea to sign up for this outdoor survival course. It sounded kind of badass at the time, just you out of the woods and whatever skills you managed to pick up in class. The final test was this 3-day solo camping trip. They'd drop each of us off in separate spots out in the wilderness, and we had to survive on our own using just a super basic kit. I'm talking no food, no water, just a few essentials, a sleeping bag, a knife, 6 matches, a plastic sheet, and a pot to boil whatever water we managed to find. So I got dropped off at my location, tied a little flag to a tree so they'd know where to come pick me up later, and hiked deeper into the woods to set up camp. Honestly, I was really into it, completely in my element. The first night was peaceful. I built a little fire wrapped up in my sleeping bag and just let the sounds of nature lull me to sleep. I woke up thirsty, of course, so I spent the morning looking for a water source and eventually found this murky little stream. Not ideal, but I let the water settle, dropped in some purification tablets, boiled it for good measure, and choked it down. Not exactly bottled spring water, but hey, it did the job. Everything was great, until the last afternoon. I packed up my camp, hiked back to the drop-off point, and sat down against a tree, just waiting to be picked up. I heard a vehicle coming in the distance, and figured, yep, that must be my ride. But instead, this old beat-up truck pulled up. Definitely not part of the program. The guy inside looked like he'd crawled straight out of a true crime documentary. He had this weird smirk and immediately started asking me what I was doing out there and if I was alone. My stomach turned. I lied, told him some friends were still packing up behind me. He didn't look convinced. He gave me this quiet stare, like he could see right through me. Then he got back in his truck and drove off. The second he disappeared down the path, I grabbed my pack and bolted into the woods. No way was I sticking around to see what he was really up to. And sure enough, just a couple minutes later, I heard his truck coming back. My heart was pounding in my ears as I crouched behind a cluster of trees and tried not to make a sound. I could hear him walking around, calling out, rustling through the brush. He was definitely looking for me. Eventually, after what felt like forever, I heard the truck door slam, and the engine started again. I didn't move until I was completely sure he was gone. Then I took off walking, trying to find my way back to base camp, because there was no way I was going back to that drop-off point. After hiking for what felt like hours, I finally ran into a forest ranger. I practically collapsed with relief. I told him everything, and his face went dead serious. He said they'd been on alert because a woman had been attacked in the area just the night before, and they'd been actively searching for the guy. Turns out, another girl from my course had a close call too. She managed to scare some guy off by blowing on this loud brass whistle until help came. So yeah, I think about that trip a lot. If there's one thing I took from that experience, is to always trust your gut. The second something feels off, it probably is. And no matter how tough or independent you are, solo camping in unfamiliar territory can get dangerous real fast. Honestly, I haven't camped alone since, and probably never will. This happened when I was 14, and I still get chills thinking about it. I'm 23 now, but back then, I had just gotten home from a beach birthday party for my best friend Mia. She was a few years older than me. I was sunburned, tired, and just wanted to get home and crash. When I got off the subway near my place, I checked the digital screen for my usual bus. It said it wouldn't be coming for almost an hour. No way I was waiting that long. So I figured I'd take a different bus, one that would drop me off a little farther from home, but still walkable. That choice seemed harmless at the time, but it ended up being a huge mistake. The alternate bus dropped me off, and I had about a 10-minute walk back to my building. My neighborhood is usually super quiet at night, barely any cars, not many people out. I was halfway down the street when I noticed the low hum of an engine behind me. A slow-moving one. I glanced over my shoulder. There was this white panel van coming down the street. Yeah, I know. Classic horror movie van. At first, I tried not to freak myself out. I figured it was just someone driving home, maybe making a delivery or something. But when I turned onto my street, the van turned too. And now, I was definitely uneasy. I picked up the pace, trying not to look paranoid. But the van never passed me. It just crept behind me, matching my speed, like it was tailing me on purpose. When I got to the long driveway that leads up to my building, I thought, okay, this is it. If they're really following me, they'll turn too. And yep, they did. I walked along the edge of the ice rink beside the driveway trying to stay under the floodlights. There's some townhouses nearby, but no one was outside. The van finally pulled up beside me and stopped for a second. I convinced myself maybe the guy was lost. Maybe he just wanted to ask for directions. I stayed a few feet away from the window, just to be safe, and glanced inside. There was an older man, balding dark hair, wearing a plain white t-shirt. I asked, "Are you lost?" He didn't say a word. Instead, he just motioned for me to come closer, like he wanted me to get in. I immediately backed away and started walking faster, but the van kept crawling next to me, like it was trying to corner me. Then, a red car started coming down the driveway, and the van took off toward the end, like it didn't want to be seen. But as soon as the red car turned out of the driveway, the van reversed, lined up with me again. It was such a creepy pattern. He kept trying to follow me, but the second a car came by, he'd vanish to the end of the road, wait, and then come back. I wanted to run to my building, but I was scared he'd see where I lived. So I just kept walking and hoping he'd lose interest. That's when I got lucky. A cab pulled up near the townhouses to drop someone off. The driver looked in my direction and noticed me right away. He asked if I was okay. I told him what was going on, how the guy in the van had been stalking me and kept circling back every time another car left. Without hesitation, the cabbie said he'd drive up to the end of the driveway and sit there just to give me a head start to get inside safely. I thanked him, and as the cab rolled forward, the van followed it again. I used that moment to bolt. I sprinted up the rest of the driveway and ran straight into my building's lobby, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking when I finally got up to my apartment. I went straight to my room, shut the blinds, and called the cops. While I was on the phone, I peeked through a crack in the window. And there it was again. The same creepy van, slowly driving in circles around my building, like it was still looking for me. I was full on panicking. The police showed up not long after to check the area, but the van was already gone. 2 officers came upstairs to take my statement. I did my best to explain everything, even though I was still rattled. About a week later, those same officers came back. They brought a still image from one of the security cameras mounted outside my building and asked me if I could identify the guy. The moment I saw the photo, I knew it was him. They told me they had tracked him down and that he was being added to the sex offender registry. I still think about how differently that night could have ended if that cab driver hadn't stepped in. All right, so let me give you a bit of background first. At the time, I was 16, about 5'7" inches, pretty lean, around 115 pounds, and super into sports. I played everything from basketball to volleyball, and I even did some track, so I could run if I had to. Also, thanks to my lovely insomnia, I was always wide awake, deep into the night. This all went down on a summer night in August, back in 2019. It was just past 2:00 a.m., and I'd been hanging out at my best friend's place. She'd just come back from a vacation and had picked up a couple of birthday gifts for me, some hoodies and candy. Yes, the good kind of gummies. We talked for a while, laughed a lot, and eventually I realized I should probably head home before things got sketchy. The area we lived in wasn't exactly known for being the safest. After dark, think shady people, late night trouble, the whole deal. So I said goodbye and started walking down her street alone. As I made my way toward the main intersection, I noticed a couple of guys crossing the road behind me. They were maybe 20 or 30 yards back, tall, probably close to 6 feet or more. At first, I didn't think much of it, but something about the way they suddenly stopped and stared at me, it just didn't sit right. You know that feeling when you can tell someone's looking at you for the wrong reason? Yeah, it was that. Then I heard one of them say, "Hey, that's a girl." Immediately, my gut went on high alert. I glanced back again, and now they were moving. One stayed in the middle of the road. The other disappeared off toward the sidewalk, where the streetlights didn't reach. I didn't know exactly what they were trying to do, but I wasn't about to wait around and find out. I sped up, trying not to break into a run yet, but my brain was screaming at me to go. I glanced behind again. The guy in the road was still coming straight for me, and that's when it really clicked. The second guy was nowhere to be seen. He was probably trying to cut me off. They were clearly trying to trap me between them. At that point, I took off running. I heard one of them yell, "Oh great, now she's running." And that's when the adrenaline kicked in. I cut down a side street, turned again, just trying to put distance between us. I didn't even care where I was going. I just needed to not be near them. Eventually, I came across this little apartment complex with a dark parking lot behind it. No lights, no people, just rows of parked cars. I made a snap decision and dove underneath one of them, tucking myself in as tight as I could. My heart was pounding like crazy. I held my breath and waited. A few seconds later, I saw both of them run past the lot, scanning the area, but not checking under the cars. That moment was terrifying. I felt like a hunted animal, just trying not to be seen. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, then crawled out and made my way home using a completely different route. I was terrified they'd somehow loop back around or still be out looking. I didn't tell the cops, which I know sounds dumb, but I couldn't really give a good description of either guy. It was so dark, and I never saw their faces properly.